The American administration believes, apparently, that a two-state solution is the answer to October 7th. If you ask any Israeli, they'll say it's a prize for genocide. Join us. Khaled Toameh, great to see you again. We have a lot of work to do right here to set the record straight. Secretary of State Antony Blinken in Israel pushing what he calls the two-state solution. Israel looks at him, scratches its collective head and says, these people are out of their minds.
You know, Dan, each time I hear the U.S. officials talking about the two-state solution, especially during this period, I keep asking myself, on what planet are these people living? Are they not aware of what's happening? Are they not aware that this is no longer about land for peace, that we've tried this before? Do they not learn from previous mistakes? What are they talking about? Are they trying to reward Hamas for the October 7 massacres? Is this the answer to the massacre, that, okay, now we will give you a state so that you can use it to launch another attack on Israel? I mean, I don't know. I keep asking myself, on what planet are these people living?
It's clear, Khaled. I was in the Knesset yesterday at the Knesset caucus to monitor UNRWA, which effectively has become a headquarters for terrorism and incitement to murder of the Iranian regime towards Israel. And when you listen to the Hamas, listen to the Hezbollah, they're talking about jihad. They're not talking about land for peace. In fact, we, as you and I have discussed now for years, we've never been in a territorial conflict from the point of view of our enemies, Hezbollah, Hamas, the Iranian regime, the Houthis, and all of the other proxies of Iran have always promised us that they are in an ideological religious war. And by the way, that's true about the PLO also. We just haven't been paying attention. Then the U.S. administration comes in and now wants to deliver the golden prize for Hamas's intended genocide, policide against Israel, a Palestinian state. That sends the exact same message that Israel sent when it ran out of Gaza back in 2005 unilaterally. The message that we conveyed by that to the Arab Muslim world is Israel is collapsing, folding its tent, and on its way to leaving the Middle East. That's the way they understood it.
Well, first of all, I'm sure that Yahya Sinwar is sitting there in his tunnel and laughing and saying, wow, it's working. Here are the Americans even coming, to help us. That's number one. Number two, who are you going to give the state to? Will it be to Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas, who has lost much of his credibility
with his own people? Now, he's lost credibility not only with Israel, he's lost credibility with 80. What was the last poll that you reported on? It was over 80%.
More than 80% of the Palestinians in the last public opinion poll published by a Palestinian center in Ramallah are asking that Mahmoud Abbas resign. This is actually an increase from previous polls. In previous polls over the past few months, it ranged between 70 and 75. So if Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas has no credibility amongst his own people, if he's extremely unpopular, and if public opinion polls keep showing that if you hold a free and democratic election tomorrow morning, Hamas will win, and that the majority of Palestinians prefer Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh to President Mahmoud Abbas, what are we talking about here? Are you talking about giving a Palestinian state to the Palestinian Authority right now, which will later be taken over by Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad in Iran? These are questions that need to be asked.
Well, it's very important, Khaled, that you bring up this issue, because let's remember and remind our viewers and the participants in this podcast from abroad that it was the Hamas in Hamastan. I mean, it's a de facto state in Gaza with its own borders, its own government, its own what we call terror military force called the Hamas, which is supported fully by the Islamic Republic of Iran and the IRGC and North Korean technology, building the most robust, comprehensive terror tunnel metro network in the world. And it made, as I said in the Knesset yesterday, it makes the London Underground look like Walt Disney. I mean, that is where the massacre came from. It didn't come from stateless refugee, revolutionary Yasser Arafat legacy Palestinians who have been refugees now for 6 generations, by the way, and they've turned from having been, they've multiplied 10 times their refugee status over the last 3 generations, right? But that's not, but the whole point is that Hamas came out of its own state to massacre Jews in the neighboring sovereign state called the State of Israel. And now they're calling for Blinken's calling for a 2-state solution. It just shows me that the U.S. administration has suffered from a lack of Islamic analysts, Arab analysts, or maybe the opposite. Maybe they have, without naming names, they have certain people in the administration that are selling them, they're selling them a bridge that has absolutely no engineering stability to it.
Then what we've had since 2007 in Gaza is an independent Palestinian state run by Hamas, Islamic Jihad, funded by Iran, Qatar, Turkey, and others. We already had an independent state. By the way, some Palestinians call it the Islamic Emirate in Gaza, including President Mahmoud Abbas, by the way, who in the past referred to it as an Islamic Emirate, he and his officials in Ramallah. So, can you imagine, what would have happened if there wasn't a blockade on Gaza? And I'm talking about the naval Israeli...
Which didn't work that well, right?
Everyone was referring to Gaza as an open prison, and everyone was complaining about a blockade imposed on Gaza, and Israel is not allowing construction material into Gaza, and it's not allowing humanitarian aid, and Israel should open the sea and all that. All this happened while there was a blockade on Gaza. Hamas built a terrorist empire in Gaza. All these tunnels were built while the purported blockade was in effect. Can you imagine if there wasn't a blockade, what would have happened? You would have had Iranian troops on the border with Israel inside Gaza. You would have had the the Republican Guard inside, the Iranian Republican Guard over there. So the Americans need to look at what happened in Gaza over the past 17 years and know that you cannot copy-paste this to the West Bank. It will be a very dangerous situation. The Palestinian Authority is already in the West Bank, and they don't even have full control over the West Bank.
And the only reason that a mass murder has not happened in the West Bank, Judea and Samaria, is that Israel has overriding control, not only in Area C, which, according to the Oslo Internationally Witnessed Agreement back in 1995, 1993, 95, and 95, divided the Judea and Samaria into 3 areas, A, B, and C. Area C, 60% under full Israeli administrative and security control, and Israel has freedom of action according to the agreement in areas B and A. And Area A, of course, contains more than 95% of all Palestinian Arabs living in Judea and Samaria. And thank God Israel is able to go in and out and does have some coordination with the Palestinian Authority's security apparatus, because if not, we would have had October 7th already, 10 years ago, not only in 2023.
And were it not for Israel's security presence in the West Bank, Hamas would have taken over the West Bank a long time ago. Who knows this, by the way? President Mahmoud Abbas. He's not stupid. He knows that he is in power in Ramallah thanks to the fact that Israeli soldiers are located less than 2 miles away from his office and from his home. So this is, again, a very dangerous development. The mere talk about a 2-state solution right now empowers the radicals and sends the wrong message to the Palestinians who attacked Israel on October 7th. The message that it sends to them is, it works. Now we will reward you with your own state.
Absolutely. In fact, you can argue that look, President Biden has been very friendly to Israel. He's been supplying Israel with ammunitions and other material in order to defend itself. So we have to recognize that the intention of President Biden has been very positive. They've been trying to work with Israel, allowing Israel to defend itself against what really is a full-blown jihad. You have to give them that credit. But they are misguided, ill-advised as to the fact right now that they are actually, not only are they failing to help Israel defend itself, they're actually helping the Iranian regime by calling for another Palestinian state on the heels of the worst massacre in any democratic country in decades.
Absolutely, and I believe that U.S. support for this Israeli operation, this counterterrorism operation in Gaza, is very important. It sends a message also to the bad players, to Hamas, Hezbollah, Iran, the Houthis, that the U.S. stands behind Israel. These bad actors, these enemies of Israel, are betting on the hope that the U.S. will throw Israel under the bus. They are waiting for that opportunity. That is their hope, by the way. And if they see that the U.S. is about to throw Israel under the bus, they will increase their attacks. So the U.S. needs to be very careful about how it situates itself in this conflict right now. You need to be on the side of the good as opposed to the evil. This
Absolutely.
is a conflict between good and evil right now.
It's a conflict between good and evil, and by weakening the good actor, meaning by weakening Israel, by calling for what they think is a territorial compromise, when in fact it is not territorial compromise at all. It is actually territorial complicity of the United States with bad actors, unwitting as it may be. They are actually further compromising Israel's ability to defend itself. The world changed on October the 7th, and it is simply essential for Israel in a united way, and I think Israel is quite united on this point, that the notion of creating another Gaza in the Judean Samarian hills of the West Bank, Judean Samaria, that rise 4,200 feet above, the Dead Sea is 1,500 feet below sea level. The Judean Samarian hill ridge rises all the way above 3,200 feet. So together, you've got 4,500 feet above sea level. To have a state, a Palestinian state, and we've been arguing this for years in the context of defensible borders for Israel, to have a state that overlooks Ben Gurion Airport. Well, the people listening and watching this podcast won't be able to land at Ben Gurion because 13-year-old teenagers, boys and girls, can put an SA-7 or an anti-aircraft missile launcher on their shoulders and bring down El Al aircrafts easily with that type of weaponry. So clearly that's not going to happen because Israel refuses, thank God, to commit suicide. But this is a conversation that it's just shocking that the United States administration, after this mass murder, would actually be wanting to reward the perpetrators of mass murder with another sovereign state. It's simply it can't be countenanced.
I totally agree, and that's why I said that the U.S. has to be very careful in its statements and in its actions right now. This is a very critical moment. What the Americans need to know is that Hamas and Hezbollah and Iran are talking about a battle for the liberation of Palestine. October 7 is not over. Those who think that October 7 ended on October 7, they're wrong. And how do we know? Listen to what Hamas is saying. Listen to what all the other jihadi groups are saying.
Right.
They're saying this is the beginning of the process to liberate Palestine.
Right. This is their Lahavdil. This is their 4th of July. Right, for them, in the way the 4th of July for the United States is the beginning of as Independence Day. The way the jihadis look at October 7th is the beginning of their, of their liberating the Middle East. They're not looking for Palestinian independence. They have Palestinian independence in Gaza. They are looking to liberate the lands of Islam, as you've said on this program before, from the
infidels,
from the Crusaders, from the infidels, right, from the Zionists. It's really, look, there's something else. There's another angle to this whole thing, and that is the reports that we're reading about, hearing about that Secretary of State Blinken met with His Excellency Mohammed bin Salman, MBS, Prince of Saudi Arabia, Crown Prince. He said, who apparently, according to the reports they were reading, insisted that re-energizing the normalization between Israel and Saudi Arabia required, of course, the cessation of hostilities and a pathway to what they call a two-state solution, which simply does not fit with what we know the Saudis have said before, and what Mohammed bin Salman is not. He has not really paid the Palestinian issue much attention insofar as he was about to sign with Israel. And this is exactly why the IRGC and the mullahs, the Iranian regime, decided to blow it up by mobilizing its Hamas proxy on October the 7th.
This is all, Dan, based on the false assumption that most of the Arab leaders want to see a Palestinian state over here. I can assure you that from what I hear and what I see, most of the Arab leaders don't care about the Palestinians. Most of the Arab leaders are secretly opposed to a Palestinian state. They have done nothing to help the Palestinians create a Palestinian state. So I don't buy this whole thing that, this whole claim that, the Saudis want a Palestinian state and they're ready to normalize relations with Israel only if you give them a Palestinian state. In the past, we've seen Arab countries sign peace treaties with Israel without demanding a Palestinian state. Take Egypt, take Jordan, take the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain. They couldn't care less. It seems that the Americans care more about a Palestinian state than many of the Arab countries or many of the Arab leaders.
That's because they live in a different culture and they will not be affected adversely by a Palestinian state. When in fact, if we look historically, Khaled, it's quite a phenomenon that many in the West are unaware of the fact that Yasser Arafat was rejected. The PLO was rejected by many of the countries in the Arab world because they saw them as subversive, and they see a Palestinian state as a subversive element in what is more pronouncedly a sort of a conservative Middle Eastern region of stability. If you look at the Gulf states, that's exactly why you said the Saudis forget it, and the Bahrainis know, and the UAE know, because they've always seen Arafat as a revolutionary that wants to subvert those countries as well. And if you look at what happened with the Palestinians in Jordan, they almost destroyed Jordan. That's what brought Black September back in 1970. Everywhere the PLO went in southern Lebanon, they destroyed southern Lebanon, and then were kicked out of southern Lebanon. But it was the Shiites in southern Lebanon that wanted the PLO out of there. Everywhere the PLO has gone, they've only brought destruction, subversion, and chaos with.
And Dan, I hear this from many Arabs, from many Palestinians, that wherever the PLO goes, they have brought disaster on their people. They were in Jordan. They brought the disaster over there. More than 20,000, probably 25,000 Palestinians were killed by the Jordanian army after they tried to establish a state within a state inside Jordan. They moved to Lebanon, where the PLO played a major role in the eruption of the civil war over there. Yasser Arafat at one point was called the ruler of Beirut.
Fakahanti state.
Yes.
Right?
Yes,
You want to make what they call the Fakahanti state.
Fakahani. That was a neighborhood where the PLO headquarters were based in Beirut. Then they came to Gaza and the West Bank. Look where we are right now. Yasser Arafat and Abu Mazen had many chances or many opportunities to establish a Palestinian state, to improve the living conditions of their people, to move forward with peace processes. Unfortunately and sadly for the Palestinians, and tragically also for the Palestinians, they did not deliver. They chose to continue the conflict. They did not have the courage to sign any agreement with Israel, and look where we are now. So that's why I keep saying the U.S. administration, Western powers need to wake up and realize that there's a very serious problem on the Palestinian side. It's called lack of leadership, brave leadership, courageous leadership, and it's also called lack of education for peace with Israel, which does not exist, by the way.
Yes, absolutely, and it really emphasizes the kind of work that we're doing at the JCPA, Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs, which is really focusing on really rebuilding and engaging Israel's relationship with our Arab neighbors from the outside in. I remember, I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, it was Ron Dermer that talked about, the current Minister of Strategic Affairs, who many years ago, as the ambassador to the United States, talked about building an out-in a strategy as opposed to an inside-out strategy, which is beginning with the Palestinian issue, which had always been sort of that mythological, a pathway to peace that turned out to be a total disaster. But what did become reality, and it become relevant, realistic, and it actually bore fruit, was, as you said, to come to normalization and peace agreements with a Saudi blessing, with the United Arab Emirates, and with Morocco, and with Bahrain, and even funny enough with Sudan, which is more and more. We've met Sudan. You and I met senior people from Sudan. And there are other countries that we can't mention on this program because it's under the radar that we have been talking to, and that are very interested in normalization with Israel. And nobody talks about the
Palestinians at all.
No, it's not because they don't care about the Palestinians per se, as the Palestinian people, as we care about them.
It's because they've lost hope in the Palestinians.
They've lost leadership. They've lost confidence in the leadership, and they know
don't trust the Palestinians.
They don't, and they know that the PLO and all the constituent members of the PLO, which, by the way, includes the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, the Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine. These are Marxist-Leninist radical organizations that are still around. The Palestinian Liberation Front, these are all, and Fatah, of course, these are all constituent members of the PLO, and they have only brought instability, lack of leadership, massive corruption, a weaponization of their own people. And that's why the Palestinian people don't want them anymore. Now they're talking about bringing leaders that are in the diaspora, like Mohammed Dahlan, who is actually quite close to the Emirati leadership. Dahlan himself has become a very, very wealthy businessman that began during his days in Gaza. One wonders where all that capital came from. We won't go into that right now. But the Emiratis, he and the Emiratis have become very close, and he's being touted as a possible local leader in Gaza.
But the question then is, will they be able to market him, sell him to the Palestinian public? I'm not really sure that the Palestinian public will accept people like that.
Because of corruption, you mean?
Because of his past association with the Oslo Accords, with massive corruption, of course, which is also associated with the Oslo Accords. Mohammed Dahlan and the leadership of the Palestinians during the Oslo Accords are all seen as merchants of the Palestinian cause, as people who made a lot of money out of the Palestinian cause, who enriched themselves at the expense of the Palestinians, who deprived their people of the international aid. And that's why I'm not sure the Palestinians will really accept people like that anymore. Right now.
It's quite amazing, though, Khaled, the way that you and I and we have other Arabist experts in the Jerusalem Center. We have these roundtables. We talk about what our dear friend and a JCPO fellow Harold Rode, former veteran Pentagon analyst of the Middle East, a Turkish desk officer, an expert on Iran. We always talk about culture, political psychology. And I've been here for 35 years. You've been here for 61 years, since you were born. But as a student of the Middle East, you learn how complicated and complex the cultures of the Middle East are. There's no monolithic Arab world. It's families, clans, tribes, neighborhoods. And one wonders where the West is in terms of their misunderstanding of the complexities of this region.
Well, the West tries to imply Western standards to non-Western cultures, and that's where they make a big mistake. They do not understand Arab culture. They think that, you can apply your own standards, your own vision, your own
working assumptions and your own
assumptions on these people. And each time you see that it's not working, you ask yourselves, what do these Arabs want? How come they are not, cooperating with me? How come they are not open to my ideas? And that's because of lack of understanding of Arab culture. You need to speak Arabic. You need to study the Arab culture in order to deal with these people. It doesn't work like that.
No, it doesn't work like that. It really takes years, really, of studying and living and breathing in the region in order to begin to understand what the devil is going on. It's interesting when we look at our Arab neighbors in the region, and they are looking today at Israel as a solution to the Middle East, which the way we at JCPA have actually positioned ourselves as an anchor of security, an anchor of technology, an anchor of innovation, an anchor of out-of-the-box thinking. And this is what many of our friends in the Arab world, in Israel, by the way, as well as in the neighborhood, they are seeing Israel, which is why we have sought to position ourselves as an indigenous member, 3,700-year-old minority member of the Arab Muslim majority Middle East, and to let the Palestinian issue go, for goodness sakes, before it kills all of us.
I totally agree, and I say let the Palestinians decide. Don't try to decide for the Palestinians. Don't try to impose leadership. If the Palestinians want to improve their living conditions, if they want to move forward, they are the ones who need to realize that they need to get rid of bad leadership. As long as they don't do that, that's their problem, not Israel's problem, not America's problem, and not the West's problem. I want to see Palestinians rise against bad leadership. I want to see Palestinians say Hamas is bad, the Palestinian Authority is also bad. And this is the only way to move forward.
That's right.
This is what we are trying to do. We are trying to empower and engage the moderate voices, not only among the Palestinians, but also in the Arab world, who understand that the problem they have is with bad leadership and bad education.
This is why, Khaled, that under the radar, on the side of the radar, local Palestinian Arab families in Gaza, to take an example, need to take responsibility and together work with Israel, the best possible neighbor you could ever dream of in terms of state building. What Israel has done in 75 years is unprecedented anywhere in the world in such a short period of time, in terms of GDP and in terms of technology and in terms of infrastructure growth, and you name it. And here the Gazans have the Jewish and democratic state is actually dying literally to help them. And we have to get rid of organizations like UNRWA, which we talked about and which I appeared yesterday at the Knesset, in the Knesset caucus, to reform, reconstruct, and possibly dissolve UNRWA, the United Nations Relief Works Agency, which is a political agency that began in 1949, 1950, that was only supposed to be around for a few years to help the Palestinians that had failed in their joint efforts with the Arab world to attack and prevent Israel from coming into existence. And 75 years later, they've become a political warfare organization, very much at the behest and assisting the Iranian regime in Gaza, becoming basically a forward political warfare base, as well as as they called it yesterday, in the caucus. It's really a terror organization that has to be brought up on charges of assisting Hamas terrorists.
I think then the future of UNRWA should be decided as part of new arrangements in the post-war era in Gaza. And Israel and the other players in the region will have to decide, do you want this organization to continue as it is, or do you want to come up with something new to help these people over there? My problem with UNRWA is, number one, it has been doing maintenance work for the refugees, I call it, or for the refugee camps. It has not offered them, any hope to move forward. It does not help them to move forward with their lives. It provides them with all these services, medical services, educational services, social services, by telling them, stay where you are. By providing them with all these services, you're actually encouraging them to stay where they are.
To stay dependent. But it gets worse than that.
And dependent. Number two, and dependent on on international aid, and not go out to work even. Number two, my problem with UNRWA is that it is creating new generations of refugees. It has inflated the number of refugees,
which happened nowhere else in the world.
Yes, I think this is the only situation where a refugee is allowed, or a person is allowed to inherit the status of refugee.
Correct.
And that's why if you ask UNRWA today how many Palestinian refugees are there, they will tell you probably 6 or 6.5 million.
That's right.
And UNRWA has actually made it much more difficult to solve the issue of the refugees.
I would even go further than that, Khaled. And what this is reflecting the discussion. I want to really share this with our viewers. Yesterday, in the Knesset Negev hall, there we had a group of experts, of members of Knesset, as well as foreign diplomats. And what was very clear is that UNRWA sounds very humanitarian, right? Because it's United Nations. The United Nations is about relief and refugees and international assistance. Well, the price of supplying assistance to the Palestinians is as follows. 95 to 99% of all employees are Hamas. It's controlled by the Hamas. And therefore,
in the Gaza Strip.
In the Gaza Strip, in the Gaza Strip. And in fact, in Judea and Samaria, in the West Bank, where there are also refugee camps, 4 generations later, where there's like nowhere else in the world, it's controlled by the PLO, but also influenced by the Hamas. But if we go back to Gaza, if you are not loyal to the Hamas, Hamas has full control over all the resources and the education towards incitement to murder, towards hatred of Jews. You should see, very well, the school books are absolutely intolerable under UN sanction and the UN imprimatur because they are controlled by the Hamas. And that is why yesterday we called for a multi-stage reform and reconstruction from the bottom up of UNRWA by, first of all, imposing immediately an international governing body that would monitor and secure the monies that are supposed to go to the children and the women and the men of the Gaza Strip, and to make sure through blockchain technology, end user benefit, that the Hamas cannot get its fingers on that money, because what they're doing, as you and I know, is they're taking that money, feeding Hamas families, bringing the material into the tunnels, into the terror tunnels, and only benefiting the Hamas loyalists and the rest of the public. As people see on Twitter, they go starving and without medicine, and they're not getting the UNRWA assistance, and they're now blaming Israel that they're not getting the UNRWA assistance, when actually Israel is actually allowing this humanitarian assistance to go sort of unchecked into Gaza. So we're calling for an Israel initiated international donor monitoring governing body in order to make sure every single shekel, dollar, euro is triple checked, and to make sure that all that assistance actually goes into the hands of the public.
And believe me, Dan, I'm sure there are many, many Palestinians out there who share your view on this, your opinion. And they also want to hold UNRWA accountable. They also have been complaining for a long time about corruption in UNRWA, that UNRWA is not really providing them with the full services it was supposed to do, it was supposed to provide them with. So the time has come to think outside the box, as you said. The time has come for a new body to take over and look after these people, or find a real solution for them, not give them money to stay where they are.
Exactly. Don't stay where they are. It's called moral clarity and international accountability. And I think our country, Khaled, our shared country, Israel, has to take the lead on moral clarity, on managerial accountability and responsibility, and be the voice of reason to the international community, because no one else is going to do it. In fact, that's what came up yesterday in the Knesset caucus. These international, I'm not without naming countries, they're not going to put their necks on the line. This is an issue that targets Israel, and the solution comes from Israel first and foremost. That's my final thought. What's yours?
Again, I can't say that other than that I agree with you, because I always say the Western countries need to learn from the Arab countries. Most of the Arab countries cut off the funding to UNRWA. Why? Because they don't believe in UNRWA anymore. They don't believe in providing this organization with money that they don't know where it's going to, that is not achieving its purpose. So, as you said, in the post-war era, there has to be a new arrangement. We cannot go back to October 6th. Things have to change. And this is the right time, by the way. And this will benefit the Palestinians themselves. It's good for the Palestinians. This is not even an Israeli issue anymore. It's about the future of the Palestinians. Do you really want to keep 80% of the people in Gaza and living in so-called refugee camps and holding refugee status and being told that you will go back to Jaffa and Haifa? Stop selling these people illusions. Stop lying to them. Tell them the truth. Help them move on with their lives.
Move on with our lives. That's what we're trying to do together. And thanks for agreeing with me, Khaled. Would that be the normal $20 grant for our wonderful discussion? It's always a pleasure and an honor to be sharing these conversations with you. And thank you very much to our loyal and thoughtful viewing audience. We really deeply appreciate your following with us, your staying with us, and we look forward to seeing you on Al-Shakal Awsat Lana, our Middle East. It's truly our Middle East, and it's all of our Middle East, and it right now stands in the balance. It hangs in the balance, and hopefully we've shed a little bit of context and perspective here together, colleagues and friends for many years. The Khaled Toameh co-host. I'm Dan Diker. Thanks for joining our Middle East. We look forward to seeing you next time.